Brielle Gage was 3 years old when she was beaten to death by her mother, Caitlin Marin, in August of 2014. Marin was sentenced to 45 years to life. Sadie Willott was just 21 months old when she died in September of 2015 from 2 blows to the head. Her mother, Caitlin Paquette, is currently serving 21 to 42 years. Dennis Vaughn Jr., also known as Boo, was found dead Christmas Eve 2019. The Attorney General's office ruled the 5-year-old was killed by blunt force trauma to his head and neck. No suspects have been named. Brielle's father, Sadie's father, and Boo's mother later sued DCYF, all accusing the agency of failing to investigate claims of abuse ahead of their children's deaths. The case brought on by Boo's mother is ongoing, with DCYF saying their investigation was adequate. The other 2 cases have settled. New Year's Eve 2021, the state would come to know Harmony Montgomery, a 5-year-old girl who seemingly disappeared while under the surveillance of DCYF after she moved to New Hampshire from Massachusetts to live with her father. In February of last year, the state released a one-of-a-kind report detailing her case.
Because it was tied to this investigation, and at the time, Harmony was still missing, and they weren't quite sure what was happening, and there was hope, I think, from the Attorney General's office and others that releasing some additional information about, what was known might help, find her.
But that hope faded away 6 months later when the Attorney General's office declared Harmony a victim of a homicide.
Harmony Montgomery was murdered in Manchester in early December of 2019.
Harmony's father, Adam Montgomery, now awaits trial on charges connected to her death. He has pleaded not guilty. Trial is scheduled for August. The review of Harmony's case also came with a list of 10 recommendations for system improvements. News 9 Investigates has learned 2 are considered continuous practices of the agency, 3 are currently ongoing, and 5 recommendations are listed as complete, including new legislation to enhance the interstate compact on the placement of children.
That really updates an old 1965 law that is just not at all designed for the way the world works today. The great thing that New Hampshire passed and is now on board. The challenge is that 36 states in total have to pass it before it becomes effective, and at this point there's only about, I think, 15 or 16 states that have passed it.
But there are portions of the ICPC that are in effect right now. Previous law did not require an ICPC or home study if a child was moving to live with a parent in another state, even if that parent did not have a pre-existing relationship.
Now the law has changed that we can actually do a home study in those instances. The court can order that. So those were big changes in New Hampshire state law.
In January, the state also finalized a provisional placement agreement with the state of Massachusetts, which creates deadlines on information that is swapped between the 2 states if a child is crossing borders.
If the states don't have these kind of agreements in place, it doesn't always work out that simply, and it can end up being something that could take 6-10 months.
News 9 requested an interview with Governor Chris Sununu to discuss the changes at DCYF. We were told the governor was leaving those comments to the agency. But in a statement, Sununu touts the progress, writing, quote, "One tragedy is too many, and while there's still much work to do, the recommendations we have implemented in the last year have helped set the stage for an even better, safer child protection system here in New Hampshire." But since the report's release, we have learned of yet another tragedy, another child who died while under the watch of DCYF. 7-year-old Javion Riley died back in January. His final autopsy results are still pending. His father, Murtada Mohammed, was arrested days before the boy died. He has not been charged in Javion's death, but is facing charges of abuse. Mohammed has pleaded not guilty. Javion was also part of the DCYF system, according to his mother.
What specifically besides this needs to be done to make sure, 6 months from now, we don't have another case pop?
Yeah, I think you're right. I can't speak about any specific cases whatsoever. But the truth is the work of, child protection is something that's constantly evolving and growing. We've had massive system changes in the past few years, which have been tremendous. And I think the foundation for a real world-class system is actually in place today. But we have huge workforce issues across the board that are preventing any of those things from hitting on full cylinder.
Really, frankly, I'm tired of having dead children around in the city. I'm tired of it.
Manchester Police Chief Alan Aldenberg says his team collaborates with DCYF on a daily basis. Harmony's case was one of them. Aldenberg says while they have a positive relationship, he also feels there are times when policies and procedures can slow progress.
I'm not saying people hide behind policies and law. That's not why they exist. But sometimes they tend to get in their own way, and we're limited on what we can say. We're limited on what we can share back and forth between us and DCYF or other agencies.
Is there additional change that can come for the DCYF system? Yes.
Cassandra Sanchez was tapped as the state's child advocate shortly after Harmony's report was released. She worked with DCYF to implement some of its changes.
An important piece to highlight is that it's more than just the DCYF system. And I think that it's difficult to get people to grasp that because they look at the DCYF system that they are specifically set up to protect children.
Sanchez says it also takes accountability of other agencies, police, schools, support services.
A lot of times we recognize that it's additional services being available in the community to reach the families before they're rising to that level of crisis. So where do we need to take a look at our system as a whole and impact change? But that also does include the DCYF system.
Tim Callery, WMUR News 9.